How am I going to buy another house when I can't even figure out how to buy the house that I want to buy to live in? How am I going to buy something for somebody else to live in?
If you've not done it before, you can't connect dots forward. But if you have, you can connect them backwards. So the idea there, where I'm going with this, is finding yourself a mentor that's done it. If I've got a mortgage and I have this income, but I want to buy these rentals and I see all the other people doing this, buying houses, flipping houses, and buying rentals, how do I do it? Well, find a mentor that's done it and ask them to connect the dots.
Welcome to the Everyday Millionaire Show with Ryan Greenberg and Nick Kalfas. All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of the Everyday Millionaire Show. We're here with Shaun Magner. How you doing, Shaun?
Good, buddy. How are you?
Good. Nick, back for another one. I'm going to ask you how you're doing, but we've been here for a couple hours.
We have. Shaun, thanks for joining us today.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
Shaun, it's been a long time coming since we are kind of neighbors now, friends in the industry. So tell us a little bit about Shaun Magner. Who is Shaun Magner? What's your business? What do you do? What do you like for breakfast? That kind of thing.
Sure. Breakfast. I usually skip breakfast, unfortunately. I shouldn't. But about my business, I run a boutique, I call it a boutique collective of real estate businesses exclusively for residential, single-family rental type of stuff. So Monument City Group, I run a Monument City Homes, Holdings, and Capital. Capital is the primary focus of the business, which is a boutique hard money lending business. I also own a portfolio of a few dozen single-family doors, and all in and around Baltimore, Ocean City. And that's the primary focus of the business.
So how did that start? Did you go to school for real estate investing, or you just kind of started this? Did you have another job before this business?
Yeah, so probably like a lot of people listening, Rich Dad Poor Dad, I read the book back in 2002 or so, written in 97, so I wasn't the first one to read it. But
we got to pay somebody to go through all of the podcasts that we've recorded and how many times that book has been referenced.
So if you haven't read it yet, make sure you read it.
Yeah.
Rich Dad,
I
Poor
just
Dad.
referred that book to somebody yesterday. They responded to something I put on social, and she says, where should I start? I'm like, go buy the book and read it, devour it, listen to it, I guess, now. So my background, I'll go back a little ways and try not to digress too much, but after high school, I had no real direction of what was next for me. So took a year off, decided to start swinging some hammers because we heard the rumors that there was money in the trades. So I swung some hammers, realized I kind of liked the trade, got a formal education from a trade school up in Pennsylvania where I grew up, and got in the field, was working as a remodel and a trim carpenter and remodeling contractor for a couple of years, and started getting to know some building material sales reps that would come to our job sites. And an opportunity popped up for a window and door manufacturer sales rep. So I just kind of jumped ship from the field to selling building materials and parlayed that to the next, and on to a few different building material sales companies and sales leadership and sales management for a few different material manufacturers. And the barrier of entry, realized that my goals and my income there and my opportunity there they didn't match up, right? So the barrier of entry for real estate's pretty low, as we could probably all agree. And
it's funny you say that, because in the beginning, when you're thinking about real estate and like you're intimidated by trying to buy properties and stuff, you don't think the barrier of entry is low.
No.
You think it's like this massive wall that you can't get over.
Well, it's real estate, right? It's not like buying stocks. $50, you can go buy some stocks, right? You get some sort of a fund, and I mean, you could do it. But here, real estate, you do think it takes thousands or tens of thousands of dollars,
right? And
to hear these like buy it with no money down, you think, how in the world do you connect those dots? So you're right, though. You do think, man, real estate, takes a lot of money to do
rich,
it.
Right? That's what everybody says. Like, I can't do that. And I think now with like social media and kind of people telling their story on YouTube and podcasts and all that kind of thing, it's making it more relevant and more reasonable that people are like, okay, maybe I can do that. But I feel like it is like this big thing that people are like, well, how am I going to buy another house when I can't even figure out how to buy the house that I want to buy to live in? How am I going to buy something for somebody else to live in?
I agree. So I recently read a book. I'm an avid reader. I read a book, Dan Barton and Benjamin Hardy. They've written a trilogy of 3 different books, Who Not How. Anyway, I'll get into that. But this book, 10x is easier than 2x, right? Not the same Grant Cardone 10x concept, but 10x is easier than 2x was the name of this book. And the one that they wrote before, it's called The Gap and the Gain. In that book, they reference this ability to connect dots backwards, right? Meaning, if you've not done it before, you can't connect dots forward. But if you have, you can connect them backwards. So the idea there, where I'm going with this, is finding yourself a mentor that's done it and saying, how the hell do I connect these dots? Like you were just saying, if I've got a mortgage and I have this income, but I want to buy these rentals and I see all the other people doing this, buying houses, flipping houses, and buying rentals, How do I do it? Well, find a mentor that's done it and ask them to connect the dots. In the book, they have this concept: as you're climbing a ladder, you've got one hand forward and one hand behind you, right? You shouldn't have a hand behind you, but that's the example they used. And I thought it was pretty interesting. So finding a mentor allows you to cut the line. It's a cheat code, right? And not a lot of people, I think now it's probably getting a lot easier because of social media and these sites like Bigger Pockets. That's probably another one that you guys mentioned quite a bit.
And the Everyday Millionaire Show.
And the Everyday Millionaire Show. But I mean, really though, there's just access to information that wasn't before. And so
Right.
I think that the excuse to not be able to do it now is less than what it was. But finding a mentor and asking them how, obviously delivering some value to them, but if you can ask them how to cut the line, you can help them connect some dots.
Getting a mentor is such an easy concept, right? But why do you think so many people fail to make that step to even getting a mentor?
Man, I don't know. That's a good question. I think maybe it's just a fear of taking action, a fear of the unknown, limiting beliefs that they'll embarrass themselves maybe, or because, I mean, listen, that's fair. People, I mean, it's very common to feel intimidated by asking a question that might look dumb, right?
And how do you also, like, if you think about it, now it's such a normal thing for us now, but if you think back to high school, if somebody were to tell you, one of your parents' friends were to tell you, and maybe this is just for me, but if they were to say, oh, I'm a real estate investor, like that's what I do for a job, I'd be like, what the hell is that? Like, what do you
Right.
mean that's your job? Like,
Yeah.
I always knew that people bought real estate as an investment, but I never thought of it as like, oh, this is my identity, this is my job. Like, that was never like a real thing. Like, you're an accountant, you're a fireman, you're a cop, like you're a carpenter. Like, that's what I thought about with
Yeah.
jobs. And I felt like somebody to tell me like I'm a real estate investor, like I was like kind of like, what is that
I don't know
thing?
that anyone ever told me they were a real estate investor. I do remember like a friend from high school's dad owning like 100 houses, and me just wondering how,
Right.
what?
So like, how do you find that mentor? You know, like if you're not in the space and you're not kind of surrounding yourself with those kind of people, or you don't know that those people even exist, or there's a place like the Maryland Investor Network or these meetups or whatever, what, where do you start trying to find a
Dude,
mentor?
I'll tell you, most of my mentors I've never met. They're authors of books, and some of them are dead. I mean, you can pick up a book and learn, and that could transition into, finding your way to Bigger Pockets, and then finding your way to a local meetup, and then meeting somebody and you explain what your goals are, and they may say, hey, you know who you should meet? You should go sit down with this guy and have a conversation. So, I mean, putting yourself out there is a big one. I really do. I mean, I believe that. I think, again, reading these books, building the confidence that you can have an intelligent conversation when you find yourself in these environments, I think is important. I mean, think about this. So I'll give you a story. When I first started in real estate, fully investing as like a full-time gig was 2015. I flew out to Vegas to attend an event. And I remember before this event, I was attending some local meetups here in the Baltimore market. And I was like who I'm talking about, who we were talking about. I would attend these events, and I would sit on the sidelines like a wallflower, intimidated to get engaged and get involved, because it seemed to me that everyone there knew everyone else, and they all knew way more than I did. So I'd listen to some schmuck talk about insurance, and then I'd go to the back and eat a handful of potato chips and sneak on out of there, right? I did my time a total disservice. Then I attended this event in Vegas, and a buddy said, sit in with me. I'm on a panel, and we're going to be talking about low dollar, no dollar marketing. So, okay, so I sat in on this thing. And he said, when you attend these events, your intention should be to not do what I did, but instead meet one person, add one person to your team, whether you need them or not. Just add one person to your team. So they made it digestible. They made it manageable, right? It wasn't quite as overwhelming. And so I came back and I attended an event and I did that. And I walk up to a guy and I explained to him, hey, I saw that it was a Baltimore RIA event. And at the time, it was a packed room. A couple hundred people were in this room. It was the main event. This was back in 15. A lot of people in this room. And the host said, raise your hand if you're a rehabber. Raise your hand if you're a landlord. Raise your hand if you're a lender. So I saw this guy raise his hand when he was a lender. I walked up. I introduced myself. I didn't need a lender. I didn't have a deal, right? I just saw him. He seemed approachable. So we exchanged information. That was on a Thursday night. I hit him back on Friday about 10 o'clock at night. I was working in the office. Sent him a message on about 10 o'clock on Friday. And he responded. I guess he took it seriously. Thinks, well, this guy's working at 10 o'clock on a Friday night. Maybe he's serious. So he accepted my invitation to coffee. We sat down, and I just kind of laid out what my goals were. And he says, man, for your house flipping goals, you should really meet this guy. And for your landlording goals, you should meet this guy. And so, sorry to make a long story long here, but I reached out to an agent who introduced me he started sending me leads. I said, hey, I like these houses, but I don't have a contractor to do the work. He said, well, you should reach out to this guy he did a bunch of flips for me in the past. I said, great. So those two and we did about a dozen deals together over the next 6 or 12 months or so, right? And then on the landlording side, I attended a different unrelated event, and I heard this guy introduce himself. I'm like, oh, that's the dude that the other dude told me I should meet. So we hit it off. I invited him to lunch, and the rest is history. And so I say all this to say that the answer to your question, just put yourself out there, right? If you really want it badly enough, you're going to find a way.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. I mean, meeting all these different people, when I first started out, the only thing I focused on was the first thing that's in front of me, and I kind of did it wrong. I would much rather have known everybody in the space, like the lenders, the banks to do the refinances with at the time, the contractors, and everyone in between, versus just, at the time I just did what was in front of me. Like, I need a hard money lender.
Right.
And then I found the hard money lender, and it's like, well, what do I do next? Like, I was asking people, like, what do I do? And then I found the contractor and fumbled through that. And then
But there's no right or wrong way to do it. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I mean, here you are, you've done well, and you pieced it together, and you're bulldogging through. I mean, that was just a different way to do it.
Yeah, but I think you said it before, like getting that mentor and having somebody that can walk you through these like deals and the problems that they went through. That is like a cheat code. It is.
It's absolutely a cheat code.
Cutting the line a little bit.
Absolutely, man.
But I also think it's harder to learn when you don't fumble through it yourself.
No, I totally agree.
So there's just situations in like property management and contracting where if I didn't like fuck it up a couple of times and somebody just told me this is how you do it, this is how you do it, I probably still wouldn't have done it that way. I probably still would have done it wrong, and now it's like ingrained in my head.
You and I have had this conversation before about property management. I still self-manage. My assistant manages in-house, and I advocate for self-management for new investors regularly. And the reason I do it is because there's a loss of education when you just hand it off. And so now I understand that it's also limiting in some ways too, right? I fully accept that. But I think that there's a loss of education when you just when you outsource that right away. And the other thing with a mentor is this. A lot of us try to shoot with a shotgun and not a rifle. This is an analogy I use a lot. Maybe we've talked about this before.
No, I like it though. I like where it's going.
Yeah. So I like, especially a new investor, right? A new investor tries to do it all, right? I want to be wholesaling. I'm going to be flipping. I'm going to buy some rentals. I'm going to buy some multifamily short-term rentals. Jesus, doing a lot, right? You see it. I see it all the time. And a mentor can help you kind of get a little more laser focused. So the analogy I use is if you want to get through this wall and you walk up to it and I start pushing on it, it's unlikely that I'm going to get through it anytime soon. If I start swinging at it, I might get through it a little quicker. But if I walk up with a hammer and a chisel, I'm going to get through it in no time, right? Because it's just concentrated effort, concentrated energy. And a mentor that's done it before can help you to set the shotgun down and pick up the rifle to get through it a little quicker. And I understand in the beginning you've kind of got to do it, especially those that are working a job. They haven't made the transition to full time yet, and I know that's a big hurdle that a lot of people want to get to. And so you have to be shooting with that shotgun, right? But I firmly believe, the sooner you can set the shotgun down and pick the rifle up, there are riches and niches. Find your way to just niche down, keep niching down. I struggle with it. We're all entrepreneurial, so we see opportunity in every damn thing we do, and we think, well, if he's doing that, I could do that. Or I should do that. Yeah. Right? I used to use this analogy when I was coaching that there was we were all trying to build a bridge over to Financial Freedom Island, right? So you start building your bridge, and it might look like a wholesaling business. And you look over, you're halfway through building this thing, you look over in the distance, and you see he's having success with this construction business. So you decide to start doing that. And this guy's flipping houses, and this one's doing wholesaling, and this one's buying rentals, whatever it is. You start doing those things because he or she is doing it and having success. But the problem is you look back a year or two later and all you've got is a bunch of unfinished bridges that never got you over there, right? And it's very common. You see it a lot. I have to talk myself out of doing new things and scratching new itches all the time.
100%. I do the same thing. I'm like thinking about starting car wash. In the last month, I've thought about starting a car wash, a laundromat, a cleaning company because Nick texted me the other day about a post-construction cleaning person.
Got some dirty shit over there, Nick. Just need it cleaned up.
That's one of the hardest, like, we literally build buildings, and one of the hardest positions to fill is post-construction cleaning for some reason. Like,
is that right?
The cleaners that clean and sweepy and just wipe the floors down, that's one thing. But
what do they do?
The sweepy. But the like post-construction where they're like vacuuming out cabinets from sawdust and like really getting into that, like that's one of the hardest things. So I'm like, why don't we start a commercial cleaning company? Why don't we? So every week I'm like, I have to talk myself out of probably half a dozen businesses that I feel like I should be starting.
I've got a real interest in private equity. I really do. I mean, and the idea behind that is that like I could be involved in a bunch of different businesses that I don't have to manage and run and operate myself. That's down the line. But
operating though, for me, is like, or like problem solving is like part of the fun.
I agree. And
Like
building
building,
it is
building
fun.
the idea of it, and then putting into place, like you figure out that one little system that makes your life like a little bit easier, and that's like a high. And then you're like, wow, if I can do this, like Appfolio. When we started like unlocking the levels of Appfolio, we're like, wow, I could do that too. And like, oh wow, we can automate that too. Like
You'll
that
find
just excites me.
you'll find that with this new VA that we've talked about.
Oh yeah.
I mean, if you can do that, maybe they can do this. Maybe they can do this. And all of a sudden you just keep buying more of your time back. And that's dangerous for guys like us because now you're going to find more shiny objects to go chase.
Yeah, I think though the shiny object syndrome in general is a huge problem for people like us. If you're like an entrepreneur, if you're somebody that's driven to build and grow your business and stuff like that, like that is one thing that has been a struggle for me, especially when you start like in the beginning, you're just like so focused on trying to make it. And then you have a couple dollars in your pocket, and that's when it becomes really dangerous. Cause then you're like, well, I could technically do this, but should I be doing this? Like that's like something that I have to like think about. And then for some reason I got on this really ridiculous train of looking at private jets and planes. I hate flying, right? I hate flying, but I was like going to these conferences, doing all this stuff. I was like, how can I make private jet into business? And I saw, this is from an Instagram video that I saw of somebody that's like, I really wanted a private jet. I figured I needed to make this much money to make it make sense to have a private jet. Or I can start like a charter business and make arbitrage on renting jets to other people and blah, blah, blah. And now he has like a fleet of jets.
Isn't that what NetJets was? You could buy in and own part of a...
Yeah, it's the same thing. But like, I'm like, well, how can I own a jet? Like, well, I have to start a business around jets, and then I'll have a jet because that's how I think. And I'm like, God damn, I have to stop thinking like this. This is very dangerous.
Similarly, with the short-term rental thing, I've been identifying places that I want to visit regularly, and then I'll buy something there that I rarely use the one we have, but for the same reasons. I'm like, well, if I want to have a house in the mountains, I can justify it because it's technically a short-term rental in my business.
Rent it out.
Yeah.
Right?
So I know you mentioned you had a property in Ocean City. Is that a short-term rental?
Yeah. Yep. It is.
How many do you have there? Just one?
Just one, yeah.
How's it going?
That thing performs really well. It really does. It's a 3-bed,
I've heard
3-bath
hit
condo.
Or miss with Ocean City short-term rentals.
This one crushes for us. It really does. We only have one, and my wife, we wouldn't own it if it weren't for
what
her.
about
She
in the
manages
off-season,
it.
like in the fall and winter?
It is. I was actually logged in yesterday, pulling some reviews off of there, and we have 2 bookings right now, and they're for next summer. So we have it's dead all winter long, which is the time that I like to go down there because nobody's down there. So except in Ocean City, there's only one Dunkin' Donuts open this time of year, which is annoying.
Which one is that?
It's way
28th?
up there. No, it's way up there. There's man,
Sean's a coffee addict.
It's in the hundreds
I
of
love
streets.
Dunkin'. I go there for. I'm on 28th. I go to right to one on 28th Street and get a coffee every morning. I'm down there.
Yeah, I brew some cold brew at home, so I usually take a few gallons down with me when I go. But if I have to go to Dunkin', it sucks. It's not a lot open down there, but it performs really well. So back to your question, that thing pumps in the summer. It's a 3-bed, 3-bath. So we get a lot of families and week-long stays. Though this year we didn't have as many 3-day or 1-week stays as we did in years past. So we had a lot more turnover, but we still crushed. It performed really well.
So. I mean, does it make up the difference of the downtime throughout the fall and winter if you like average it out throughout the whole year?
Yeah.
Kind of like more than like what you can get if you rented it out annually versus, short term?
Yes. So we've done, I can tell you that property we've flowed about $40,000 on that thing, almost 40, about $38,000 on that thing. So that's cash flow. So it carries it all year round.
Mm-hmm. Nice.
Wow. Yeah. The short-term game where we have the house in Florida, and it is interesting because you got to really like the science behind booking like week-long people, or if you book them like Thursday to Monday, or Sunday, which is what people normally wanted to do. Now you have to basically assume that like Monday through Thursday is going to be vacant.
Right.
And in the beginning, we were just like, oh, just keep it open, 3-day minimum or whatever it was. And then we just started getting these super inconvenient bookings. So now in like through July of 24, we have these bookings that are like 3 days and 3 days, and it leaves like 2 days, or 1 day in the middle that's vacant. And at $500 a night, like that opportunity cost adds up after a while. So the short-term game is a totally different beast.
I didn't get into that business to get into that business. We went down there. My wife was pregnant. It was the height of COVID. We were living in the city at the time, and we just wanted some space. So we went down on like a baby moon or whatever you call it when you get away before you have a baby. And as I got nosy, I'm like, well, who owns this place? Where do they live? What do they do? What do they buy it for? Right. So I started doing some research. I'm like, what could I buy it for? So by the time we left, we'd written an offer on a place. We didn't get that one, but now it got in our head. So my wife every time I'd come home, she would show me a new listing, and we ended up buying this place sight unseen, and we renovated it, furnished it, and put her touches to it. It was definitely less of a business thing than it was a shiny object, an itch that we decided to scratch. I'm not on the hunt for more short-term rentals. I'm not building that business at all. But
if it was COVID time again, I would be. I mean, that was a great time to buy 3%. I got mine at 3% as a vacation home, which was awesome.
Yeah, the debt on this place is great. That's part of the reason it performs so well. If I bought that today, it certainly wouldn't perform with that kind of flow I mentioned.
So now let's get into that a little bit, because rates are crazy. They're higher than we've experienced in our careers as real estate people. What's like your strategies for your borrowers that are looking to build wealth, looking to buy rentals, looking to flip houses? What are you telling them to do now that the long-term rates are damn near close to the hard money rates?
Right. I know. I do. I know. We've had a lot of conversations. When I say we, me and other lenders have had a lot of conversation recently about that. But we're still the easiest money in town, and we're no longer, the delta is getting smaller, right? Between us and banks. I wouldn't say that I'm telling them much of anything. I will say that the loan portfolio has shifted a bit. What I mean by that is, since I'm when I was an active operator and still am an active operator, it's primarily, rentals than flips. I've bought way more rentals than I've done flips. And so naturally my rental or my loan portfolio looked very similar to my rental portfolio. It was about 2/3 burr and 1/3 flip. And I was looking at those numbers recently, and it's changed dramatically. I was wondering why my average loan size has increased so dramatically. But then I looked at the portfolio, the split between rentals and flips, and it's 50-50. And the reason is probably largely because these rates, rentals aren't as profitable as they were before, right? Unless, of course, you're going direct to seller with your marketing, and you've cut all the middle men out, if you will, then you can still make a lot of sense of it. And I hear people say, well, buy, date the rate, marry the house, and buy now, you can refi in a few years. Well, I never bought cash flow for the future, right? I mean, I wanted to quickly fire my job, so I needed the cash flow today. So I've never had that mentality of, well, down the road it'll perform.
I think a lot of people say that too, and I don't want to speak from experience because I haven't been in it that long, but there was a time like, in the 80s, if you said that, you'd be waiting like 21 years for the rates to go down.
I saw something.
It was like a meme or something like that. But I was like, okay, well, that makes a lot of sense, because all these people are like, oh, it's fine. Just buy it at 9%. It's going to be fine. You're going to get down to 5 next year. Like, who's telling you that like they're going to drop it to 5 next year? Because
where's the crystal ball?
That's not what happened the last time this happened. It went up and up and up, and then it stayed up for a while before it came back down. So like if you're buying stuff at a 9% rate, just in the hopes that next year is going to be 5%, like you might be not so pleasantly surprised.
No, I agree. I mean, I saw a meme or something that someone shared. You guys might have seen this. It was from somebody local and I didn't fact check the data, but it said that if you bought a house in 1971, I think it was 71 or 72, when rates were 7.1 or 7.3%, and you decided to wait until rates dropped to buy again, you would have waited until 1992 to buy. It's 20 years. So you'd have been renting for 20 years. Right. So there is an argument that there's always a good time to buy. It's just that how you buy should differ, should change. Yeah. I'm not actively buying myself right now, rentals. I've got one house under renovation, and I haven't put anything new under contract since June or July. And that's difficult for guys like us because I'm a deal junkie. I want to buy. But I'm also realizing I'm parking a lot of cash in these deals between acquisition costs and carrying costs and overage of construction and refi costs. You're parking $15,000, $20,000. You can only afford to do that so many times before you think, Shaun, should I be doing this? Trading $20,000 for $400 a month. It's a big trade-off.
That's so true. Whereas 2 years ago, we were refinancing, cashing out that amount, and it was still cash flowing pretty good because the rates were so low.
That's right.
So what's the move now? Is it just, do we flip? Do we not buy rentals? Like I've slowed down a lot on buying too, but with guys like us that have built businesses around it, it's hard not to feed the machine of the people that you have working for you.
Yeah. I think the biggest problem originally when rates started going up is sellers still wanted top dollar, and they were still getting top dollars even when rates kept getting higher and higher. Whereas now I do see the market pulling back a little bit, where sellers are starting to realize that the market's starting to slow down. Houses are sitting on the market longer, which is most likely going to drive prices down, which will help out in those scenarios where the rates are 8% to refinance a rental property, for example.
Yeah, I mean, I just talking a little shit about Daniel and Wesley over at HK. They tried to sell me a house for $315 or $317, I think it was, and we were over at Brian from Beltway's event on whenever that was last week, and I was like, nah, this house. I went there, I saw it. I was like, the house is worth $305. Like, I'm not paying you more than $305. Like, we're gonna get $325 for it. We're gonna give what I said. They're like, we'll give it to you for $317. I think that's what it was. And I was like, no, I think it's worth $305. Like, I'm gonna stick with $305. Like, okay, we're gonna take this other offer at $315. Well, I just got a text today. If it's if you still got $305, like, it's all yours.
That's
and
indicative, isn't it?
And I'm like, yeah, that's what the house is worth. Like, the person back down at $325 because that's not what it's worth. Like, if this was last year or a year and a half ago, the house would have sold for $350. But I think we are starting to see the softening of the market a little bit, which is like, where does it stop too? That's like the concern, right? What are you like? Are you guys trying to hedge against that in any way, or?
Not necessarily, no. And the reason I say no is because the portfolio is split with what I do primarily is I service investors with our short money loans, right? And so a lot of these operators are doing both fix and flip and burr, right? So they're doing both, and one feeds the other, and nobody wants to go out and get a job. So they're going to continue doing what they're doing. We've got a lot of steady repeat borrowers in the pool. We're not really shopping for new regularly, right? We're not having to market for new borrowers and such. And so these guys are staying steady. Now, that said, of course, I don't want to have all my eggs in these few baskets, of course, but I'd love to be buying again. I do look forward to buying again. Plus, obviously, in hard money, there's not a lot of write-off there, right? So, I'd love to buy some more depreciating assets for those obvious reasons. But right now in the single-family space, it just doesn't make a lot of sense. And I've listened to one of your episodes recently. You guys are talking about multifamily, I think, with Michael Schiff, and that's a space I've had my eye on for a long time, but just never pulled the trigger. And I certainly am not planning to do it right now. But I think that why I bring that up is that I think that the exit strategy or the asset class, I might be making some changes in the near future.
So let's talk about that, because today I analyzed a deal with one of my clients who I manage his properties for, and he has, he does a lot of data scrubbing. Like, he gets lists from people like Faisal and does a lot of data scrubbing, and he has under contract now an RV park in, like, you know where Rocky Mount, North Carolina is? So it's like just north of there, right off 95. It's like a 100-unit RV park, and it's got a ton of value adds. Like, right now, it's got individual pedestals with electric, but they're not individually metered. So they could put like smart meters on there, charge people back for electric. Just stupid things like that. The lots aren't cleaned up. That needs a lot of landscaping. It needs some love. It needs better management. It needs some marketing. Right now, it's like 30% occupied. It needs to be 50% to make real money. But at like 60% occupancy, the cash flow, the cap was like ridiculous, in 25%, with like very, very little marketing. I mean, very little management. You have one or two people that manage the entire park, and it's all their own shit. So it's like, you bring in your trailer and it breaks, like, sorry, you're get fucked. Like, that you can't, too bad, so sad. So I think that's like a cool model. Changing, like you said, asset classes. Like, I was looking at today, and I was looking at like, okay, so if we can just do some marketing and raise this by 10 trailers a year, we're going to make an additional $60,000 a year, whatever it is. It's $6,000 a year or $600 a month. So what's that, like I don't know. It's a bunch of money.
It's a lot of money. So you like that asset class?
I do personally, just because like this is right off 95. How many people are snowbirds that drive from here down to Florida? They have a place to stop. It has public sewer. This was the other thing that I really liked about it, because a lot of the stuff that I've heard about RV parks is the septics. Septics are expensive to begin with. This is on public water, public sewer. Like, the water bill for 100, now it's not as occupied, but it's $200 a month. Like, that's for all the water. Now you can smart meter those out and charge that back. But the cash flow, like you'd be all in with CapEx, purchase, everything. It was like 1.2 million, and it's $600 per month per spot with 100 spots. What's 600 times? 600 times is it $60,000, right? $60,000 a month on a $1 million.
So this is an RV park, so a temporary pull in, pull out.
Yeah.
I got you. Yeah,
And they said they have a couple of long-term people that like live there full time, but most of them are just like coming in for a month. They work. There are a lot of workers. He said like there's some development going on nearby. It's like an hour from Raleigh, so there's a lot of people that come in, even companies that rent and will put a trailer on the spot for some of their workers or whatever.
What's the demographic of the owner right now? Who owns it? What type of person?
So it's
company?
It's an old guy that tried to basically, I think, from what I understand, sell. He tried to subdivide it and sell it, and they wouldn't. The county, the jurisdiction wouldn't let him. So he said, "Okay, well, I'll just set up an RV park, essentially," and that's what he did. And it's an old guy, doesn't want it anymore, doesn't want to manage it. He has done a really bad job of marketing it, and that's why it's just sitting there kind of empty. But the purchase price is like $880, and CapEx and everything, like I said, you're gonna be in it for like 1.1, 1.2. And if you're even 70% occupied, you're bringing in like $40,000 a month, like on $1 million note. That's pretty fucking good.
The reason I asked them the demo of the owner is because of these boomers that are all retiring. That's what's got me interested in private equity. I mean, so many business owners that have no succession plan. They're aging and they're getting up there in age. They want to retire. They're going to sell their businesses off. A lot of mom and pop. And a lot of the things you mentioned earlier, right, with car washes and laundromats and such.
Trades businesses, service businesses.
For sure. I mean, I don't, and I'm going to botch this statistic, but I believe it's something like 10,000 boomers are retiring a day or a week.
Oh, we're famous for making
crazy.
up just bullshit statistics.
So nobody fact check me.
Numbers you want.
Just go.
Fact check. We got it right here.
Just go with it.
How many boomers are we just started
retiring
this
per
Google,
day?
Man.
Oh, this is good. Yeah. How many boomers are retiring a day? It's some staggering number.
And I think that their generation too, we have such an advantage because
10,000. You were right.
Bingo.
Yeah.
Look at me.
10,000.
Who needs Google? Who
Damn.
needs
That
Google?
is crazy.
That's a lot of people.
Yeah.
Man.
So-
And a lot of them own businesses.
And I think one of the big things that we have the advantage of, and I feel like maybe you and I, we've had so many like long business talks together, but like I feel like maybe one of the ones is that the ability for us to implement technology and beat out those companies that haven't integrated technology in a successful way. Like they're, in their 60s, late 60s, they're now trying to sell their business, and the only way that they're going to get the value out of it is if they are valuable by using the stiff stuff that they're doing.
I've got a lot of buddies that made the shift to the self-storage asset class, right? It's an asset class a lot of people like. It's for a lot of good reason, but a lot of these guys that are flipping these, or at least value adding to these facilities, are because of what you're talking about. There's a mom and pop that's owned it for decades, generations maybe, and you pull in and it's gravel parking lot. The corners of every building have been banged up. There's nobody working any facility. There's no security. There's no cameras, right? There's no lighting in the parking lot. None of that stuff. So these guys are essentially just coming in and they're adding tech by putting gates, automation, and things in place, building out the websites. Similar to short-term rental, that's more of a business that happens to have some real estate involved in it, in my opinion.
Just
right?
collecting money online is one thing that
these folks aren't doing.
Right.
I mean, even me, I started collecting rent from maybe about 10 years ago or so, and a lot of it was money order or cash that I would have to pick up. That's ridiculous. Now, if it's not in our software, it doesn't it didn't. If it's not a maintenance request that came through online with pictures, it didn't happen. We're not collecting money through Cash App or Venmo. It's all paid through the portal. So you have to adopt, you have to embrace it.
So
embrace the change.
I have this like kind of segue into, because I know that you are starting to think and talk about, maybe I'm going to blow up your spot here, but doing some business coaching on your own to private businesses and such. With you being a coach, what is one thing that you come in and the first thing that you're looking at? Is this person like coachable? Is this a business that I even like, that I want to be involved in? Like what is that kind of look for, and what are you looking for in these business owners?
Predominantly, we're focused on real estate investors that want to go from being a hobbyist to 6 figures regularly, or 6 to 7 figures, right, to scale and grow their business. The business acumen and the the word just slipped me. What I'm looking for predominantly is the business acumen and the why, the desire, the real desire to grow. I'm not looking to. The mindset is a big one. That's the word I was looking for. Thank you. Sorry, I don't know why I said thank you, but the mindset.
Welcome.
Thank you. The mindset. That's the big one. Why in the world are they seeking coaching? Is what they're looking to do realistic? Is it not? And are they the type that is coachable and they're going to be able to listen to this? Because there's nothing more deflating than walking a horse to water and not watching them just sit there and not drink. I did some coaching for, at the time, one of the nation's largest real estate investment education companies back before pre-COVID. We're traveling around the country doing some speaking and coaching for them, and I like some of these people spend tens of thousands of dollars to join these programs. And I had to convince them, it felt like on some of these coaching calls, to want to be an entrepreneur even. I'm like, what am I doing here, man? Like that's painful. So I'm looking for not that, right? Or I'm looking for that so I can avoid that. Because I want to see results, right? I don't want to pour into someone and them not have results. So that's what I'm looking for. So the mindset is a big one, man.
That's kind of interesting. Like what I would really like to get into is not so much coaching. I don't think maybe like new people into how to start. I would love to go in and look at businesses that are like 20, 30 years old that have had the same management, the same person, the same Karen that's sitting behind the desk doing the same paperwork, the same workflow.
Why she got to be a Karen?
Well, that there's Pam.
Pam, that's better.
I mean,
Karen.
Karen or Pam. That's the only two older white women that is in the office. They're stacking these papers in when their competition is me on my phone with Dropbox and Google Drive and Google Suite and the VA in the Philippines for $9 an hour, where Phyllis is also, she's in the back office now. Phyllis is taking the papers that Karen scans and then putting them into a different folder so then they can stack.
They have the wet sponge there so they can get their finger wet when they thumb through the papers.
I'm being funny. I'm joking about it, but like there's real businesses, people that I know, and I'm not going to call them out, but like people that I know that are stuck in these ways that my construction company is doing more revenue than them and I have half the staff. Like, how is that possible? How are you going to compete in this market when you're not changing with the times? You don't have the person in the Philippines. You don't have iCloud. You don't have Google Drive. Like, you're still operating in this kind of old. I would love to take those businesses and consult them and be like, you're doing this way wrong. Let's fire half these people. Let's hire Dropbox. Let's hire Google Drive. And now we're going to be double the valuation.
So some of these modules that I've been building out, they focus around business foundations, right? And so getting the domains and the entities established in the right way, and adopting the right types of software to be using so that you're not stuck in the past. I remember when I got into the rental space, I was mentored by a guy who called himself the lazy landlord. I'll leave his name out, but he called himself the lazy landlord. And so I just kind of adopted that. And this guy was using Excel spreadsheets, very successful, no doubt about it, and learned an awful lot from him. One of the most creative thinkers I know, but he was just antiquated, right? There's no way around it. And people now have run circles around him and lapped his success in a short period of time because of they're embracing the tools that this guy refused to embrace. And so part of these modules that we're building out definitely do speak to business foundations. So we're just picking apart, what are you currently using and why? How is it working? I don't know if you guys follow Marcus Lemonis. Do you know who he is? He had a show, I forget the name of it. Anyway, it was a television show, but I saw him speak recently at an event, and he was a keynote speaker there, and his whole thing was just saving businesses, just rehabbing businesses. He would come in, and remember there was that guy, the Bar Rescue. You ever heard of that show?
Yeah.
It's the same thing, but for small businesses. I forget the name of that show. Sorry. Anyway, no chance he's watching this, right? Marcus Lemonis. Anyway, but interestingly, he would do that. He would deep dive on someone's business and find out the weak points and exploit those weaknesses, draw light on them and correct it. I think that's awesome. I think that's a lot of fun. I'm not saying that my business is perfect, but in theory it is, right? So I know what I should be doing.
You know what the thing is too, like even if you have a business that's making 50% net margins and you're doing great, like you still don't really know what you're missing until someone else comes and looks at it.
That's
right?
true.
That's very true.
You just really you think everything's going well. So like even successful businesses, they have consulting companies that come in and look at things because you just have these blinders on. You're like, okay, well my bank account's growing, the assets are growing, the people seem happy, so let's just keep rocking and rolling the way it is. But you don't know that your parallel business that's coming up, that 20-something that's like building a software that's going to eat up Appfolio and eat up all these other things that you're doing, you have no idea that that's also happening at the same time. So as well as you think you're doing, there's somebody else that's like coming up the pike and is going to take your spot.
I think it's a good exercise to have your business audited, even if by just a friend, somebody else that's in the business. You know, we
Nick
were
and
out
I do that all the time.
Yeah, we do.
I'm
Yeah.
sure you do. You and I were on the boat a
Yeah.
few weeks ago, and we're like, and you, I forget what the mention was, but it provides perspective that you're because this is a lonely business at times, right? We're on islands at times, right? It's a cliche.
Mhm.
We all say that. So you get, kind of, I don't know what to say, like in your own lane, you just stay in that lane, and to have somebody else that's maybe in a similar business or an ancillary business to come in and say, hey, why are you doing it that way? Why haven't you used this? Why are you still using that thing when this is now out?
Mhm.
Like, dude, I didn't even know about that thing.
Yeah.
Right. So having it audited and having somebody come in and poke holes in your business is a healthy thing for sure.
Just like the simple question, I think I probably asked Nick this, and I think somebody asked me this before, and it's like, okay, well, if I just gave you like double the amount of business right now, like, why can't you handle it? Like, what's the
Right.
reason? What's going to be the thing that breaks you?
Yeah.
Is it your staff? Is it your training? Is it that you do too much in your business and you don't have enough people that you're delegating to, or people aren't trained right? Like, I think that's a huge, I mean, maybe just mental exercise with yourself as a business owner. Like, okay, what if tomorrow double business just came in? How would I handle that? Would I fail? And how could I possibly succeed? What's that next person that I need, or the next software, or whatever the tweak is? You have to think to start that like problem solving kind of, thought process.
And I think another thing, this is kind of parallel paths what we're talking about, but accountability partners, right? And I have an accountability partner in almost every aspect of my life, right? At the gym, I have a trainer because, well, if I wake up feeling kind of lazy, I know there's somebody waiting there for me at 6:30, right? I got to go. So having an accountability partner, they allow you to they get the best out of you, I think, in all aspects, whether it's for your mental health, you're talking to a therapist, if it's your physical health and you're at the gym, or you hire a business coach just to help you poke holes and draw light on the weaknesses and find out what, I mean, there's no harm that can be done by that other than your ego gets a little deflated, but an ego check every once in a while is a healthy thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, absolutely. So when you're thinking about starting this coaching business, what is like your step one in trying to sell yourself to people? Why should they hire you? And that's kind of one of the reasons that Nick and I started this podcast. It's almost like a living resume, right? Like people now see us. We're starting to throw bigger events where, most of the people now in the real estate space are going to know kind of who we are. And that was done on purpose. So then maybe in the future we can sell different products or grow our businesses through that marketing.
Sure.
So how are they convinced that Shaun Magner's the guy?
I like that living resume thing with the podcast. It's exactly what it is. I mean, we've been doing some of that for the last year on social for the same reason, because I've been I'm a little older than you guys, so I've not embraced social as quickly as some. And so last year about 2 years ago, I recognized my business really needs it. We've had, some social presence for a long time, but we took it a little more seriously about a year ago for that same reason, just for credibility. And I mentioned earlier, riches and niches, right? If someone I can help somebody achieve at a high level something that I have. I'm not going to be able to coach. If somebody came to me with a car wash, you mentioned that earlier, for some reason that just came to mind. I don't know the first damn thing about car washes and running them. I could probably figure it out pretty quickly. But what I've done is I've been able to produce some level of marginal success in what I do in this small little thing that we've got. And I've had a lot of conversation with a lot of investors, and I've done some coaching before, and I realized that there is a big gap between connecting those dots between the wants and the haves and the have-nots. I hate to say that, have and have not, but the ones that want it and the ones that have it, right? How do you get there? Well, I'd like to be able to reach back with that olive branch, or as I mentioned earlier, with the climbing that ladder. I've had it's not for monetary gain at this point. It's because I want to make an impact, right? And I want to be able to provide, I have a fun life. I live a free life. I'm in control of my time. Though I work very long hours and hard, I enjoy it. I like building this thing, but it's all by design. And so, I'd love to be able to provide that for others. And so if I'm not going to be the business coach that helps somebody take a company public, that's not at all what I want to do. But if they're trying to build a little bit of a lifestyle brand, a small little lifestyle brand, I can certainly help with that. I don't know if that answers your question or not, though.
No, it does a bit. Now, why do you think, because we keep going back to the kind of getting people from working to not working. And it's so ironic to me, because I think the people that want to be their own boss. They want to be the entrepreneur, but they still have that job. They think freedom is on the other side, as like they don't have to work as much. But really, that's not the case. You have to work double the amount, but you just kind of get to choose when you do it. So sometimes it's 2 a.m. when you wake up and you can't sleep and you just have to do those emails because you have to, not because like you're on the clock because your boss is looking, but because if you don't, then you're not going to get paid next week. And then you can't pay your employees. So what do you think is like that thing that separates those people, but that like they know that they want to be an entrepreneur, but they don't really know what is on the other side? Do you think that they just, most people just like hate their job and they want to do something else? Like what is that thing?
I think it's both. I think some people do truly hate their jobs. I do think, to your point a minute ago, I heard this saying a long time ago, becoming an entrepreneur is, you're quitting your 40-hour work week for an 80-hour work week. And it's very true. I mean, it's very, very true. So I think, I don't know if it's
just like false pretenses, or
I think that social media influencers have done big companies some damage by making their employees think that the grass is greener. It's certainly not always greener. We all know grass is greenest where you water it, right? And that can be at your job. If you like your job, stay there. If you're answering a calling as a first responder or a teacher, that's admirable. Stay there. Just pour water on that grass. It'll be green. But I think that these social influencers have really... people see that and they want that lifestyle, and I don't know that they realize the work that goes into it behind the scenes. It's a lot of work. It really is. I also don't know that entrepreneurialism, and I've had a hard time with that word, right? Entrepreneur. I don't know that I consider myself an entrepreneur. I think I'm doing the same thing that it's been done before. Like Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos. These are some entrepreneurs in my opinion, right? Steve Jobs, Rockefeller, all of them. But I'm not inventing a wheel, right? I'm just doing, it's already been proven. So I have a hard time calling myself an entrepreneur. But I think that this self-employment thing is appealing to people because they think they can control their time, and you can to some degree. But if you don't do it right, your time will control you. And I don't know that people are maybe realize that until they get onto the other side.
Yeah, I think one of the things that when Nick and I were out talking to Brandon Turner, one of the things that he said that really resonated with me when you're starting a business, and I was guilty of this, and I'm sure most people are, you do the task yourself. You start this business, you're doing the task yourself. You start selling that service to somebody else, and then you infill underneath you with employees that you train to do that task instead of starting with people above you, essentially. So like starting with a director of operations and then have them being the people that are like subcontracting out some of the labor on the lower end, where it's not, maybe they're not hiring a full-time person because you can't afford that. And then that top person, instead of getting a salary, gets equity in that business. Now you've like from the beginning kind of auto removed yourself from the daily operations or from the need to learn how to clean the floors or how to wipe the toilets down or whatever. You're kind of just like putting somebody else on top. What do you think about that strategy?
I love it. You and I talked about this in brief one day, and I completely agree. I've not even done it myself, and I completely agree. I mean, I love the idea of hiring a higher level, higher caliber, something that scares you. I don't even know if I can afford this person. I don't know why they'd even want to come work for me. That's the person you probably need, right? Depending on the business, depending on your goals. If your goal is to stay the lazy landlord, as I mentioned earlier, chucking the truck, I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. So you might not need to think as lofty or shoot for the moon in that case, right? But if your goal is to grow, as I think a lot of us want to build and grow, and we enjoy doing that, we get a lot of fulfillment from building and growing. It might be, it's kind of counterintuitive. You'd think, well, I'm doing all these tasks. I need to buy myself some time. I'm going to hire a VA to do these little tasks that I don't want to do so that I can be thinking about the bigger picture, right? Okay, that sounds good in theory. But if you could hire somebody bigger than you and put them in place instead, almost flip that thought on its head, I think that sounds, I mean, it gets me excited. I think it's amazing. I have not done it myself, but I think it's a great idea.
So with my property management company right now, and I was golfing the other day with Brenton and was explaining this to him. Like, I was like, our property management company right now is not making much money profit-wise, but I'm overstaffed, which is like a place that not many property management companies say. Like, I have higher level people than I should on staff, not making money, but now I know that those systems are like so solid that the next person that comes in underneath them is going to be trained properly. They're ready to take on somebody. There's not, fire drills getting put out every single day. It's like you take that short-term hit for the ability to set yourself up for like that long-term gain.
Yeah, I love it. I ask myself on the way into work each morning, usually every morning, what's the most important thing that my business needs of me today? And it's usually just, like you said, it's either putting out fires or it's dealing with some day-to-day stuff. I've got an assistant that helps with a lot of that, but I think to myself, what if she leaves? What if she was gone? What would I do? And so, that's a real thought. You've got to be prepared for those moments. And so that's why it's important to embrace software and important to think bigger. But I love the idea of bringing somebody in even bigger than you that's almost intimidating to you, right?
Right.
I love the idea.
And just saying, hey, like this idea is, if it's successful, you get 50% of it or you get 40% of it or whatever it is. We can't afford your salary right now, but we can afford to give you this equity.
I have an interesting thought, kind of circling back to the private equity space. I was doing some deep diving a couple of years ago in this private equity thing, and I came across a guy. We got on the phone one day. I forget exactly how we got in touch, but he had a concept, and how he bought and how he gained equity in businesses was by adding value. And I'm like, well, tell me more about that. So he was a marketer. He was good with building funnels and bringing in, inbound leads. And this guy cut his teeth with small real estate teams. So he'd contact a real estate team and say, hey, if I can increase your sales by X% in X period of time, can you pay me X dollars, right? This is just for resume building. And he did that a few times successfully. So finally, now that he had proof of concept, he reached out to a small contractor. This is out of Philadelphia. So he reached out to a small contractor and said, listen, if I can grow your business by 50% in the next 6 months, I think it was 50%. Some big percent, whatever it was. If I can grow your business in the next 6 months by 50%, would you give me a 30% equity stake in the business? The guy's like, he had him and haw, it was his baby and all this, but he ended up doing it. And midway through the 6-month period, the guy called him up. The contractor called this young guy up and said, we're there, let's sign you up, because he just pumped the sales guys, filled the sales guy's schedule. They had more business on the books than they ever had. And they're like, well, I'm going to give up 30% of this much bigger business that I now have. It's a no-brainer for him. So I don't know why I went off in a little bit of a digression there, but yeah, it made me think about that.
Yeah, no, I love that. Like the automating of businesses in general. Like there's a family member of mine. He's like one of the smartest people that I know. He was a Chinese linguist in the Air Force. Like looks like us, but speaks perfect Mandarin and 3 other dialects of Chinese. Like just super good. Was in the military, then went private sector or whatever. And he's an automation guy. So all he did for the government was take tasks that were done by probably 50, 60 people and automate them with computers, artificial intelligence. And that was his job. But he got paid like a government employee did, like not that much. Right. And I was like, dude, if you took, and I was actually fishing with him the other day, and I was like, dude, if you took all of those things that you got rid of, like he got rid of like complete, departments of people in the Air Force, like got rid of their jobs because of his automation. I'm like, if you just did that in like the private sector of business to like 5 or 6 businesses, and you're like, hey, if I can like figure out a way to get rid of half of your overhead, which is like mostly payroll, if I could just like get rid of half of it, would you give me this much equity and a buyout plan in 5 years or something like that, where you could just like lock yourself in, be like, hey, like talk about Elon Musk. He went into Twitter and fired 80% of Twitter. Like there's a video of him like talking. He's like, yeah, it turns out like you don't really need that many people. Like he fired 80% of the people. Like I think most businesses are like that, where the owners just become complacent. Like, I'll just hire this person to do this or just subcontract this or do that. Like I think most of these businesses have so much fat on them that can be trimmed and automated and technology can take over. I think there's so much value in doing that, in holding value, taking an equity stake, and then either selling it back or just collecting the dividends.
Yeah. Now you make me think of subscriptions in my own business, and probably in all of our business. You pay Dropbox to have an account for the year, and you start using Google Drive, and you never got rid of the Dropbox account, and you keep paying that. Right? You're both smiling. You're guilty of it too, like I am.
I have both Dropbox and
I think that's some fat that could be cut out. And I talk with my assistant about that regularly. I just saw a charge today from on one of our cards from jobsonline.ph or onlinejobs.ph, the Filipino Fiverr and Upwork that a lot of people get their VAs from. I'm like, why did I get charged for the second month? We only needed that last month. Get rid of this thing. So anyway, you made me think of that between auditing and then hiring this person, or bringing somebody in like that. What was your family member's response to that? Did they have any interest in building a business to help people's businesses?
So yeah, they did. I think I opened up his eyes a bit to the getting the money, getting the equity back, because he was like, well, people aren't going to want to give up their equity. And I was like, well, because I remember the conversation that you just said about the guy. We were sitting in this basement, or standing in this basement. You told me about the guy that you were just telling me about on the podcast. And I was like, well, look, dude, like if you think about it and you promise this person you're doubling their business and you're just taking 25%, and in that deal, you have a 5-year buyout plan. So like your business gets valuated in 5 years, you just buy my equity out and it's all done. So you just put aside this much money for the next 5 years and boom, my stake is bought out. Now you have your whole business back. That's like a genius.
And you know what this kid told me? He said, this guy was in his mid-20s. He said he was bringing him, and this was about, like I said, a year or 2 years ago, $17,000 to $21,000 monthly dividend checks from this contracting business. So his 30% stake was bringing him, and he said that his role was director of sales and marketing. You got to think it's a small remodeling contractor. What is director of sales and marketing? He runs their social media and he helps these people like make sure the funnels are functioning properly and help them convert these leads into sales. 4 hours a week is what he said he was working. Now, I don't know if I believe that. I mean, we all say we work less than we do, right? But
yeah, Nick's famous for lying about how much he works.
No, I work quite a bit. I wake up at 6, start
Marcus,
working.
fact check. What did he say?
Google it.
We were in Florida. He says, I work like 2 hours a day on my rental, like 2 hours a day. For the next 4.5 hours, he's like frantically on phone calls, walking around Orlando, Florida. Literally, we're all like, all of us, Daniel, everybody's talking like, oh, 2 hours, like we're going on 4 hours of you walking around on the phone right now.
Yeah,
he's like, oh, that's the construction side. That's the construction side,
Yeah,
not,
there's 2 sides
not the
to it,
property
but-
management side. So he just breaks it up just to justify him.
No, I mean, realistically, we're always on call. We're always working all hours throughout the day and night, sometimes, most of the time.
Yeah, that shit sucks. The nighttime work. That I was just asking Tony, who was just on working at Bay Management. For us, the property management stuff, it always happens like in the afternoon. Like all the problems are happening, and nobody else is working except for me. So that's when I end up having to deal with.
it's convenient how like furnaces go up on Friday nights only or Saturdays. You're like, well,
Yeah.
how is that a thing?
I think
How
it
is
was
that a thing?
last year when we had those like very cold temperatures, like down into like the single digits.
It was like New Year's or
yeah, it was. I think it was either Christmas
Christmas and
Eve
New
or
Year's.
New Year's Eve, and it
Yeah.
was like it all happened. It was like 4 or 5 different like pipe. I know you had a pipe burst. I had some, furnaces that were down, and I'm like, man.
Yep.
You know,
Yeah,
you say that
Christmas
working
Eve.
like the late nights suck, though. I disagree. I have a small office that's not at home. I bought an office space nearby, and I get so much work done at night because the phones aren't ringing. People aren't calling me because I'll find myself on the phone all day long.
I'm just at night is when I'm dealing with problems that aren't my job. Like I'm dealing with the maintenance requests that the daytime staff didn't get because the people were at work and they came home and their toilet was leaking or something was wrong. And then I'm the one at night. So one of the things that Tony mentioned that I think I'm going to start doing is staggering my staff time. So maybe like hiring a VA for just the nighttime, just doing like an overnight kind of person. Because the problem is with property management, everything is an emergency for these tenants. So if you don't treat it like an emergency, they're going to complain. They're going to send the BBB a letter that,
If they're subsidized renters, they've got a little bit of leverage with the programs,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
They can call in an emergency and you've got to respond.
I mean, it's just all like, they threaten to put their money in escrow, or it's just, there's always something where it's just like, okay, it's your water dispenser on your fridge and it's Friday. I'm not going to get it fixed tomorrow or Sunday or probably not Monday either.
That's the problem with having water dispenser on your fridge in a rental.
Yeah,
That's true. Yeah.
that is true.
Yeah, that's
But
a good
some of
point.
these bougie Canton places, you just put it in, or a lot of these owners bought it, lived in it,
Yeah.
and now rent it out. And like, that's something that comes with the house. So in my lease now, it does state, we do not fix ice or water dispensers. It's
How
strictly
about garbage
in there.
disposals and dishwashers?
So,
What do you do with those things?
I used to, when I first started, I used to buy brand new washer and dryers, and I used to put in my lease that, this is a new washer and dryer that I'm providing you. If it breaks down, it's your responsibility. and that would kind of help with, service calls on like if they overload the washer, or overload the dryer, and something goes wrong with it. Like, this is a brand new washer and dryer when you lived in this property, but then that became, I couldn't afford that anymore to buy brand new washer and
Right.
dryers
Every time a turnover
for
comes,
everything. So it was like,
you have like a
I eventually
warehouse
had
of
to, I had to take
slightly
that out of there.
used
Yeah.
fucking
So
appliances.
it was just like from the beginning, I had someone, who had more properties than me say, it just, go to Lowe's or Home Depot, buy a set of cheap washer and dryer, brand new. You get the warranty. And then over time, I'm like, man, that's adding up. And then when the cost of appliances went up, I'm like, I have to get them used now. And I could no longer add that in there. Like, hey, you're responsible for this, for a used, appliance. I felt that wasn't the right thing to do.
Are you doing that still? Are you buying used for your new rehabs?
I'm buying,
for new rental rehabs, are you buying used?
Yeah.
Are you?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
I had done that for a long time, and I've been buying new for the last few years for that same reasons, just buying new. But
I don't buy them every turnover.
Not at the turnovers, no. But for new, because if you need to get the highest appraisal and the refi, you want to have the nice shiny stuff in there, I suppose. But I don't know that a brand new washer and dryer adds value to the appraisal, but you get the idea.
Well, I don't think appliances are supposed to, but obviously if you're looking at it, it's
more of like
marketability to the tenant.
Yeah, I think it's more of like, oh, this looks good, so the appraiser's more likely to just give you a better number.
Yeah, or just keep walking.
There's so many appraisal games that
100%
that you play. Like, you just show up, and you like just showing up to appraisals is one thing that like you have to do. If you don't do it, like, you're gonna get played by these appraisers.
Yeah, I haven't showed up to an appraisal in 2 years, maybe.
Really?
I haven't either. I used to go to all of them, but I went to, I had this, I love what you're saying. I'm glad you said that, Nick. I used to go to every one of them, and I would try my best. I would try not to offend by giving them some comps, right? Here's what I'm thinking.
Most of them like
I would
it.
offer, I would say, hey, do you mind if I, help you out and send you something, and then kind of like gauge the response?
I'm like, here, I need $225.
Yeah. I mean, but then you can, in some cases you build a relationship with the same appraiser if you're going out there regularly enough, but all you have is conversations about the
I'm not
Ravens.
Gonna name names, but
I know.
There's a couple that we all know that we're like, okay, yeah, but I'm good. Like, I don't need to go.
They've taken the pictures, they've taken the measurements, and they get back in the car like, hey, what did you say you needed on this one? Like,
But the game changer on who to meet are the inspectors. Baltimore City. Mainly Baltimore City inspectors for me. Like, when you're going through even like a UNO,
make sure you have cash on you.
Yeah, like make sure you have a gift card to like Dunkin' Donuts or Lowe's or anywhere, and just give them a $3,000 gift card. They'll sign off on anything. No, just kidding. No, but seriously, meeting these inspectors, like I met an inspector for I actually met him for a plumbing inspection, which I probably shouldn't have. The plumber should have been there, and I like knew him from like a couple years ago at properties in the area. And I shouted his name as he walked through. I was like, oh, he's like, I haven't seen him forever. And like, he's known to be like a hard ass. So I was like glad that he had that initial interaction with me. And then like went into the house, he just signed off. He's like, did you do this? I was like, yeah. He didn't even check it. He just signed off on it just because I was engaged with him.
Yep. No, there's certainly, it's very much a relationship business. I see that in my lending business often. Like, I'm proud to have a reputation of being a relationship-based lender versus a transactional-based lender, right? It's not just dollars and cents trying to fill as many people as we can. We also don't run a $50 million debt fund or something big, right? We're very boutique in size. And so it's about the relationships, right? And there's a great example of why those relationships are wildly important.
Yeah, that and just being out in the space too. I think that's huge. Like I was saying before, this podcast is the living resume. The events, people see you out there, like you're meeting people. It makes it easier for them to want to spend money with you because they know that all these other people in the space that are also successful at least know who you are. So if like, especially in Baltimore, maybe it's different in other like bigger markets like New York City where there's like 1 billion people. But here, like
Google, fact check that.
How many people in New York City?
There's at least 7 million people in New York City. But like that, if you were a bad apple and you were out at these events in Baltimore, people would know who you are. Like if people didn't like you, it would be known that people didn't like you. So I think like just half of it being here.
8.5. Yeah.
I was close.
You were not. Yeah, you weren't far.
So yeah, I think just like, being out there, making a name for yourself, even if you haven't done any deals, like just being there, meeting these people. And I think that's like going to be the thing that kind of gives you the confidence to take that step, that
So
leap.
I'm going to ask both of you guys this. So we're actually having our event in January.
January 11th,
If
CDP's in Towson,
upstairs.
6 to 9.
If there's someone out there because we're so used to at this point, because we've been in the real estate industry so many years now, and we're so used to being around other people in real estate. So I know there's a lot of listeners out there who maybe they don't even have a friend in real estate, for example. Like, how would you encourage them or like tell them like, hey, like, how would you get them to an event that in their head it's like nothing but real estate people, they don't know anything about real estate? Like, what makes them want to come when it's hard for them to interact with anyone? Like, how could we encourage somebody like that to come?
I think, not to jump in, but I mean, so to something that I said earlier about not going with an intention, shooting with a shotgun shooting with a rifle, not a shotgun, going in there laser focused with the intention of, hey, you know what? I'm brand new. I don't even know what I need to know yet. I don't know what I don't know yet. I want to corner one person, have a conversation with them, and be vulnerable, be open to being vulnerable. Now, how to find the events, if that's what you're asking, I mean, there's lots of ways to do that. We can talk about social and meetup.com and all those. But once they get there, I think just being ready to be vulnerable that evening, that's a big deal. I mean, is that what you were asking?
Yeah. So, well,
and
not
making
finding
sure
the
that they're
events,
interested in that thing too, right? If you're like interested in starting a coffee business, so then don't come to the real estate.
Well, no. I was mainly specifically towards real estate. Someone who knows of an event and they just don't show up because they feel left out, or they don't feel like they can have a conversation with somebody because it's all real estate related. But I love your point where you said you just have to go in there and just ask questions. Like I love it. Like growing up, I would always ask questions, and I didn't care if it was a stupid question. If I didn't know it, I wasn't going to be shy on asking it, just because of what other people around me were thinking about me answering that type of question.
I was kind of different. I knew that I had a question because I wasn't able to connect the dots. Maybe that the teacher was trying to connect for us, and I was be embarrassed to ask the question. I would just stay quiet and stay dumb because of my ego or because I was intimidated. So it's hard. It is hard for some people. It might not be as difficult for you in a room like that, but for somebody like me, when I was starting out, it was just overwhelming. It really was. And so I think that the confidence of just leaving your ego and your pride in the car and going into that event and saying, I'm going to be vulnerable. I'm going to ask one person if they can help me to connect this one dot. Hey, where do I begin? What do I do first? Maybe find the person that looks the nerdiest, the least intimidating person in the room, right? They'll find me. I got glasses on, and maybe they'll corner me. I love it. Bring it on.
I think too, like one of the things is like you have to be an action taker just in general. So if you aren't taking action, you're not going to be successful. It's like a direct correlation. So if you see the event and you want to do that thing, whether it's a coffee event or a real estate event or a contracting event, and you don't go there, then you don't really deserve the thing that you're talking about.
That's a good point.
Then you're just talking about it. You're not really taking action. If you really wanted it, you would go there, whether you felt like an idiot, whether you didn't have any questions, whether you were confident, not confident, comfortable, not comfortable. It doesn't matter. Like if you just didn't do the thing, then you suck. Then you got to do better. Next time, do better.
Another thought that I have to that point is go in there with a chip on your shoulder instead of what I just said. Go in there with a chip on your shoulder and just say, I just want to see if this is for me. I want to find somebody that can tell me why should I want to become a real estate investor. You know how many of us are going to want to jump at that conversation?
Yeah.
That's
right.
Especially in our industry, like my wife hates hanging out with us, as you know, most of the time, like because it's just a bunch of dudes that are talking and walking.
But she's a trooper. She comes to all the events.
She does. She is a trooper. But like, she's just like, oh, is it just going to be you and your real estate friends that talk about real estate the whole time? Like, yes, that's exactly.
I don't have any other friends.
But that's our community is awesome in that sense that like, there's not a ton of other jobs. Like you go to, like I was a teacher for 9 years, right? You go to anything that gets a bunch of teachers together, whether it's an after school event, a happy hour. It's just all of these people get together, complain about their job. That's what it is. You go to an office setting where it's like the accounting team. What are they doing? Complaining about their job. They're complaining about the people. They're complaining about Phyllis in the back that she's not fast enough, and Karen in the front that she's too slow, blah, blah, blah. In our world, it's like, yes, we talk about problems, but we're all like so happy to talk about the problems and solutions. And like, it's a community of people that really, truly do love what we're doing and talk about it so much that it annoys our spouses and other people that are not in the space.
We're natural problem solvers, and you've got your own problems you're trying to solve, but you're in a conversation with other people and they have some problems and you get to chime in. How
and
fun
there's
is
similar
that?
problems.
Yeah, there's similar problems.
Where you thought, that no one else in the world had a lady that came in and did this in her house, in their house, or said this in court against them. Like, just, you're like, nobody else could have ever went through this. And then you sit with like 5 or 6 real estate investors. You're like, oh yeah. This time this person did this or this. They're like, oh wow, okay. Like, you also had a meth lab in the basement and a drug den.
It's
like,
so funny.
Nice.
I have a lot of friends that are not in, or most of my friends at this point are real estate focused, but I have some friends that are not, and they see some pictures we post or some stories we share, and they're like, where do you even find these houses? How do you, houses are boarded up with a tree growing through it? Yeah, exactly. Is that a skeleton of a cat? That's definitely a dead cat.
Yeah.
What? And you're like,
This is gold.
Yeah, you're right. They hear that mold is gold, right? This house is full of mold. Why would you go in there? Because we know why we'd go in there.
Yeah.
But it's interesting you say that. Yeah, I think, and I remember being in corporate and attending going on national sales meetings or going to sales meetings, and the happy hour afterwards there was somebody who was nursing a hangover from the night before, just bitching about the company and the direction it's going and how wrong it is. And I'm just like, what?
Everybody has the next best idea.
Oh, yeah.
The boss sucks. This guy's not right. That's what it is. I've been to corporate events, not in my own job, but I've been to teacher events in my own life, and I've seen it and I've been around it, and there's nothing like the real estate investor community. Like, we're all like living and dying for all of the problems that we deal with on an everyday basis. It's pretty funny. No, that's true. And I also think that most of the successful people, especially like people that we all surround ourselves with, like, there's not a scarcity mindset. Like, I just had literally a competitor of ours, like Bay Management. There's another management company. There's 7,000 units they have. I have a couple hundred, like, I don't even have 200 units under management yet. And I'm sitting here talking. Last week we had Ryan Gammett on, who runs a contracting business. Like, there's no possible way that I can remodel or manage every house in Baltimore. There's like 300,000 houses in Baltimore, I think. Fact check that. No, I think I looked it up before. I think there's like 300,000 houses or something.
In the city?
Like, in the city.
Yeah.
Where it's like, or maybe even more than that. And I'm like, there's no possible way that two companies can manage all of the houses.
No, and I heard a thing, somebody referred to...
What do we got?
Yeah, let's see it. Yeah, to almost 300.
Almost 300.
Yeah,
see?
but ask how many are homeowner.
Oh, how many are rental houses?
Yeah.
That's a good question. I think Baltimore probably has a high number of rental houses, I would imagine.
I would think so. I think about competition, co-opetition. I heard that term a long time ago, and I think it's kind of a goofy word, co-opetition. But your competition is your co-opetition. You probably learned a lot. If you're running a business that manages a few hundred doors, your ego isn't so big that you don't think and realize that you could learn something from somebody who's managing 7,000. So
Right.
I would invite that conversation. I don't view that as competition. I can have a lot to learn from somebody, and equally, they have a lot to learn from you. Baltimore City.
51%
Are homeowners.
are rent.
49% are owner occupied, so 51% are rentals.
So 150,000, or what was it, 300?
Wow, I'm surprised by that. It's split right down the middle.
Yeah. 150,000 homes that need to be managed.
Yeah.
So hit us up, pepropertymanagement.com. Sorry, now I'm distracted.
Competition, discussing co-opetition, learning from your competitors. I mean, that's why these meetups are so healthy. Having these conversations are so much fun, because you just, like I said it earlier, you just get stuck on an island a lot of times, right? And you get in your lane, doing your thing, keeping your business in check, in front of mind. That it's healthy to have those conversations with others, how they're doing it, what they're doing. I mean, some of my best friends, you could consider them competitors, right? Yeah. My mentors become my best friends, and my businesses mirror theirs. So technically, I could be in competition with them, but we all feed each other, right?
Right.
Whether it's deal flow or it's just knowledge or it's resources, there's no way you know it all.
Yeah, I got a bunch of cabinet doors sitting on my porch because of you.
There you go. That's right.
Yeah.
Just an introduction.
Putting new cabinet doors on?
I got a new... I shouldn't say this because I feel bad for Current. No, I have a cabinet supplier that doesn't have the same line of cabinets that Current has. So for more of my like homeowner and more custom stuff, like this company offers just a lot of different stuff. So
Edit that shit out.
I'm not gonna say their name until they pay me for a sponsorship, but That's that. So Shaun, how can our listeners find you? They're looking for money. They're looking to connect. They're looking for business coaching. How can they find you?
Yep. Primarily on the socials on Facebook and Instagram, Shaun Magner, Shaun Magner, Shaun Magner. That's the same. Fortunately, there's not too many of them on the social, so I don't have to get any creative names. So Monument City Capital is our website for our lending business. You can just find me on social, Instagram and LinkedIn. Or I'm sorry, Instagram and Facebook primarily.
Nice. You're not dancing on TikTok yet?
No, man, I'm not. I know I need to embrace it, but I haven't done it.
We
And
just
I do
started a
associate
TikTok.
everybody. If you have a TikTok account, in my mind, you're dancing behind closed doors. I don't care what you tell me. I know you're doing it.
We have a TikTok account for the podcast, but Marcus made it, and
Does he dance behind the doors?
Yes.
See, somebody's dancing. You have TikTok, you got to be
No,
dancing.
but our VA manages it now. But it is one of the just like I feel like you gotta just have to do all of them.
You do YouTube Shorts. I mean, I was paying a company to do all of our posting last year, and we were on 5 platforms 5 days a week, and I'm like, I don't even know that I spend all my time on 2 platforms because I
Right.
just prefer the user experience of those interfaces more than say LinkedIn. Even though I know there's a lot of fire on there, I just tend to gravitate to what I'm used to.
Yep.
But you have to be on all of them.
You have to spread yourself across them, and you have to manage them right.
What a task that is.
Yeah. Hire somebody.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Hire somebody.
I'd be doing it full. I would, yeah. If I manage my own social all the time, I'm not good at it. I do it, but I'm not good at it. So a lot of it is outsourced.
And I think getting out there, putting your stuff out there, and like people hate on it. You get hate all the time, but like if you don't put yourself out there to do it, then people don't ever see it. If it's not there, they can't see it, right? So like I feel like for people like us that are doing it, are trying to build businesses, like you do need to put yourself out there. You need to post, you need to help people, you need to talk to people, interact, engage. It's all important.
There's definitely a theme of vulnerability in this conversation. You're right. It is. You've got to check the ego and just what's best for the business.
Yeah.
It's often not the same as what's best for your ego.
And if that kid from high school that still follows you is like hating on you and like talking to your other friends that didn't do anything with their lives and still live in their fucking parents' basement,
Well,
that's great. Like I love the fact that those people are hating somewhere.
I hope they are.
Yeah.
I'm
Same.
sure they are.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Shaun, I don't want to take any more of your time from you and your family. Thank you for coming down.
Thank you guys for having me.
Thanks
Yeah,
for coming.
appreciate you taking the time.
Anytime, guys. This is a lot of fun.
January 11th, we are having another event. I know I've snuck it in there. CVP's in Towson. It's up on the screen here. 6 to 9 p.m. We're looking for more sponsors. We're going to have, goal is 200 plus people this time. So hit me up if you're looking for a sponsor, Ryan at PE Property Management. The event is on Facebook. It's the the Everyday Millionaire Show Real Estate Investor Meetup, right? Yep. All right, guys. See you next time.